Okay, I'm here. Hey, everybody, it's Dave. I'm back. Hi. It's the end of August. 2024. Oh, that means summer's over. Especially for us up here in Canada. How sobering. It's fall coming up. Time for pumpkin spice lattes and scarves and mittens and slippers. Sweaters? Sweater weather. Right? We all love sweater weather. Yeah. Well, we've collected all of your amazing responses for the month of August. The whole question around because of a podcast blank. Because of a podcast, something happened. You got to meet someone. You got to talk to your favorite star, or you got some interesting thing happened. You made some money. You are a different person because of a podcast. Something happened, whether or not it's your podcast, someone else's podcast. But because of a podcast, Dave, something happened, and I have to tell the world. Some of my best podcast buddies and pals are here to share their because of a podcast story with you for the month of August. So happy to collect all these together and present it to you with links to everyone's show so you can go hear their podcast. Let's dive into Because of a Podcast here on the How to Podcast series. So glad you're here. howtopodcast.ca. If you want to participate in September's question of the month, which you should, head over to howtopodcast.ca and more information will come out soon for September's question of the month. But here we go. Here's some of my best friends. You ready? Because of a podcast. Fill in the blank.
Welcome. You've got mail.
Hi, Dave. It's Dr. Zeest Khan from the Long COVID MD podcast. And I want to share my Because of a Podcast story. I am a physician in California, and I was trained to take care of the most critically ill people in the entire hospital. My specialty was open heart surgery, lung surgery, and because of my skills there, I took care of a lot of people who had traumatic injuries as well, and people in the ICU. I got sick in 2020 taking care of people in my community. I got sick probably with COVID, and I haven't really recovered. I was very, very ill for many years and, well, a few years, and I'm still finding my way back. I lost my voice quite literally, and I had my identity shaken. Recently, I'm well enough to start talking about my story and the challenges that a lot of people with this condition called long COVID have. It's a bunch of symptoms that happen and a disease process that occurs after an infection, in this case, the COVID-19 infection. But I feel very lucky. Because of this podcast, I am meeting the most amazing people. People who are fighters, people who are creative, people who are finding solutions to a really big, complicated problem. And more than that, because of a podcast, I am learning to redefine my identity. What does it mean to me to be a doctor? What does it mean to take care of people? And how can I do that when I have so many physical limitations? But I'm doing it. And you have helped me, inspire me to keep going. And I'm taking it one step at a time in real life. I'm taking it one step at a time in the podcasting space. So that's my Because of a Podcast story. I think it's going to get broader and more amazing as it goes. Thank you for the work you do and the help you offer us. Check out my podcast if you're interested in dealing with complex disease in a healthcare system that's probably not designed for you. We can do it. Long COVID MD is the name of my podcast, and you can find it at longcovidmd.com or any of the standard apps. Bye, Dave.
Hi, Dave and How to Podcast Series family. It's Scarlett from Classic Advice. My podcast is all about my life advice that I would like to pass on to you guys. And a lot of it is centered around mental health, but not everything. It's a relationship advice, parental advice, all that kind of fun stuff. You should be able to find me on all the different apps that you can have podcasts on. But if not, you can always find me at classicchronicles.ca. And this is in response to your question of the month for August, Dave, because of a podcast blank. So I have a few written down here, but there's probably even more that I'm just not even thinking about in the moment. But the first one is, I'm no longer battling loneliness. I have made so many amazing friends since I started my podcast back in March. And yeah, it's just blown my loneliness out of the waters. It's amazing. The second thing that I have, which is kind of related to the first one, is I've made so many new friends. I love our Saturday meetups because it's just such a wonderful group of people that are so genuine and lovely. And I will reach out to different podcast hosts, or I'll reach out to different guests that have been on shows and ask them to be on my show, or just reach out to say hi. And it's just blows me away. Like, my life has completely changed since I started my podcast back in March. It's opened so many different doors, and I've met so many amazing people, and we're going down to Pod Summit in September. I'm so excited to meet you and Jen and all the other people that are going to be there. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. The next thing that I have is that I'm just so honored to be a part of this podcasting community, to be a part of your meetup group and the How to Podcast Series family. And just the podcasting community is such an awesome group of people. It's such an awesome group of people. Like, if I would have known this, I would have started a podcast years ago. The next thing is, I feel like I found my calling or my purpose in life. Being there for people is so fulfilling and so rewarding, and it seems that it's kind of always been there in my life. It's so amazing. It really is a rewarding experience to be able to be there for the next person, and I really, really enjoy doing my podcast and everything that goes with it. Can it be overwhelming at times? Oh, 100%. But it is very rewarding and very fulfilling. So, yeah. The next thing that I have written down is my mental health and my life in general is becoming so much better. My podcast is all about becoming a better you and giving hope. And because it's like my mind is constantly on thinking about different topics for different episodes for my show. I'm constantly thinking about how I can become a better me, how I can give hope to the next person, and how I can be there for people. And it has really just that flip of mind frame switch is really, really made my life better. And because I battled with depression, anxiety, and PTSD, I do have quite a bit just about mental health on my show. And my mental health has never been better. So, yay. And the last thing, but definitely not the least, is I feel like I'm actively living my dream. And that is an amazing feeling to have. And I'm so happy that I made this decision to start my podcast. And if you're thinking about starting and you need help, then you know that people are here for you. I'm here for you. Dave's here for you. I can go on and on and on. Everybody in that meetup group on Saturdays is here for you. So don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. If you don't know how to do something, we are all here for you. I hope that you've had a wonderful summer. Kids are going back in school probably by the time that you've heard this. And yeah, I wish everybody a very happy, lovely day, and we will catch you next time. All right. See you later. Bye.
Hi, Dave. This is Russell Sharp from the Serial Killers podcast, podcast all about the pests, diseases, and weeds of arable crops. I love the How To podcast series and the Daily Dave. I thought I'd get back to you with your question of the month. Because of podcasting, which we've started in the last year, we've got about 6 or 7 new customers, which doesn't seem like a lot, but each farmer is worth thousands of pounds to us here at Utrema. So being considered a thought leader, being able to show that we're a trustworthy source of information has been crucial, and podcasting is really important to that. We found that podcasting is really good at being able to tell customers more information over a timeline. We love talking to farmers on podcasts, particularly because they listen to podcasts while they're in the tractors, and we can even throw up images, one per podcast on the episodes. So that's been really good, and so we also promote the podcast. With every order we put out a little slip, which has been really good, because getting people to listen to the podcast is the hardest bit. Once they've listened to one episode, they're probably going to subscribe. So just sending out a little flyer with every order we send out has been really good. And then promoting the podcast as an actual advert on Meta, that's also been really useful, because people might not see an advert, they might not want to click and want to buy something straight away. But then if they're into podcasts, people are always looking for new podcasts. That's the biggest problem with podcasts, is they're difficult to find ones that you're interested in. And so if you can just do like a few pence or a couple of pound a day advertising your podcast with something that the customer, your targeting audience, will be interested in, it's a great way of sort of getting people into your podcast. And once they're there, they're going to subscribe and they're going to listen, and you've got them then for years. So, we've been on a podcast journey now for just over a year, loving it. And your tips and advice on the How to Podcast series have been invaluable. So thank you very much.
Okay, this is Dave jumping in. This is a little snippet from my interview with Kevin Palmieri. I asked him because of a podcast question, and this was his response. A great episode. Go check out Kevin Palmieri. He is the host of 2 great podcasts, including Podcast Growth University. And here's Kevin's response. 2, because of a podcast. Here's Kevin Palmieri.
Because of a podcast, you will face fears that you didn't know you had to, and you will understand yourself at a deeper level for sure. You're going to learn more about yourself than anybody else is going to learn about anything. That's the podcasting. People ask, why do you love podcasting so much? I couldn't tell you. We don't have enough time. But the simplest thing is it has changed my life, not just externally from a business success perspective. If anything, it's more internal from a place of fulfillment, self-awareness, and self-reflection. And it's just a really good test. It's another episode. Let me see what I can do. I like the challenge. When people email me, they say, when do I send you over the questions? I say, you don't send me the questions. I don't want them. I don't want the questions. I want to do it. I want to have a conversation and see if I can handle it. I like that. That's what I'm training for. So it'll change your life externally and internally more than you realize, probably, in as much as you let it.
Dave, it's JJ, and I haven't left a message in a while, and I waited till the last day. I literally just got done driving. I pulled over, found a spot to camp for the night. I'm currently circumventing the island of Iceland in a camper van. Yes, sir, in a camper van. Just me, myself, and I. I've been here for 4 days now and fly out on Monday, so in a couple more days. And it's been absolutely amazing. But before this month turns into September, I wanted to answer your question of the month. Because of a podcast, I have my own podcast, and I am living a dream that I've been wanting to live for 2 years now, and it is finally in play. And that podcast was yours, Dave. howtopodcast.ca. Found you on Spotify, listened. I listened to several episodes. I can't tell you which ones, but you gave me the motivation and to go for it and to reach out to you. And you are so accessible and you were so helpful in coaching me. And now my podcast of What is, excuse me, what's your ripple? There's 8 episodes into it, and I've got a couple guest speakers lined up. Plus, it's blossoming into what's your recovery ripple podcast on the side for those who are recovered addicts that are several years into your recovery. And because you are recovered, what is the ripple that you are making today because you're sober? I mean, I love good news stories, and I want to hear from you about that positive ripple that you are making because you have made the choice to become sober. So that's my other podcast I'm starting. It's called What's Your Recovery Ripple? And that is all because of you, Dave, and your podcast. So because of a podcast, I am now living a dream, becoming more confident, becoming more grounded in a purpose to help others, because I've been there and done that. 5.5 years sober now. The stories I can tell, I tell you, I can relate to military, I can relate to alcoholics, and I can help. And I'm here. So let's do this. And thanks to you, Dave. All right, Dave. And as always, hey, thank you for everything you do, making a ripple in the world of the podcasters. Shout out to Scarlett and Classic and her classic advice. And because of you, Dave, she started hers as well, which is really, really cool. You influence a lot of people. So thank you, Dave, for having me on as a recorded mini co-host. I'll have you on my show soon. And be sure to tune in. It's called What's Your Ripple? All right. And please be sure to pause, love yourself, and be aware of your ripple. With love and gratitude, JJ.
Hey, it's Dave here, jumping on near at the end. I wanted to save this one for the very end. This is kind of the reason why we asked this question in the month of August. It all became from an interview with Mike Martin on my show. He was on my Dad Space podcast. He's also on the How to Podcast series. Mike Martin shared a story that really, oh my gosh, like really set me back a little bit and made me really contemplate the power of a podcast. And I'll let him explain it here, but in just a brief overview, Mike was at a very dark place in his life. Mike had tried to end his life. He wasn't successful. Gets up the next day, groggy, makes his way to his truck, and instead of hitting the radio, he hit a podcast in his truck, and his whole world changed. And had it not been for that moment and that podcast and that podcaster, Mike might not be here to share this story with you. So if you think for a moment that your words don't matter, if you're wondering if there's anyone out there who's listening to your voice, and if all this podcasting thing is really worth it or not, if that podcaster had decided that day to not record their podcast and not put it out there for Mike to find in a moment he needed it the most, Mike might not be here for us. And I just want you to know that you, as a podcaster, can reach people that you would never think you would ever reach. And here's a little bit of Mike's story, and I would love for you to go check out more about Mike. But here's Mike Martin, and this is his because of a podcast story that sparked the idea to ask you this question in the month of August. I wanted to wrap up with Mike's story about a podcast. And because of a podcast, here's Mike Martin.
It's one of the most powerful statements that I could think about in regards to reflecting on my own journey. You know, we'll get to the reason of this campfire here in a little bit, but my journey began with being lost within depression and anxiety, and actually reached a point where one night after a very intense conversation, I took a stroll out into the woods where I was living at the time with the intent of never coming back and never being found, because I went out there with the intention of taking my own life. Now, it was a cold night that night, and I don't know how between the effort that I made and the hypothermia, I managed to wake up the next day. but I did. And I stood up, somehow stumbled my first couple of steps back to my truck. I turned down a podcast and got smacked in the face with the realization that the journey that I was walking needed a new direction. And in order to take that, I had to take those first couple of steps. So the podcast was called The Hunting Collective, which is based obviously around the outdoor hunting world. And on that episode, he just happened to have the Stoic author Ryan Holiday as his guest. He was promoting, I believe it was The Obstacle is the Way book. And, you know, he started throwing all these different Marcus Aurelius quotes at me through the podcast. And in the context of where my mind was at, feeling like this was terminal, to hear this guy tell me that everything that I'm facing right now is an opportunity to showcase my children something powerful and something amazing by taking the obstacles and the impediments of the situation and turning them into the way, you know, the path to finding a better way for myself. And ultimately, it led me to this path, down this path that I call one of the hardest roads. And it taught me how to befriend all these things that I was turning away from. And those right there became the basis of not only my new philosophy on being a father, but also my new philosophy in life.
So there you go. Some great, amazing podcasters responding for the month of August and sharing their because of a podcast story. So excited to have all of you amazing podcasters participate this month in August. September's question of the month is coming out, and I'll have an episode all about it, but I'll give you a sneak peek. Basically, I'm going to be asking you as a podcaster, whether you have one episode, you have an idea for a podcast, you have 1,000 episodes, it doesn't matter. I'm asking you to respond to the question of the month for September, and it simply is, please share one piece of advice to help a new podcaster. Anything that helps you, anything you've learned, anything that would help somebody starting just like you. You've done it, you're in the process of doing it, and your words matter, and you can help somebody. So you don't have to be a podcast guru. You don't have to sign up for a course to learn how to be a podcast expert. You are a podcast expert. You don't have to pay $2,000 to get a diploma to prove it. You are a podcast expert because you're doing the thing. So as you do the thing, you learn about yourself, you learn about the process, and I would love for you to share your journey as a podcaster and answer that question of the month. One piece of advice you'd give a new podcaster. You're going to also tell me your name and the name of your show so that we can do exactly what we do here for you. And again, if you were interested in following up with all the people who answered the August question of the month, then go through the notes here in your app. Scroll through. If you scroll up on your phone or whatever, you'll see a list of all the different people who responded and a link to their podcast and their information. Please go and support these amazing people. And if you haven't done this yet, we've done multiple months of asking the question of the month. If you haven't responded yet, this is your chance. It's September. I want to have many, many, many responses to the question of the month. You have some knowledge, you have something to offer, and I'd love to hear from you. So let's celebrate you. Let's celebrate your podcast. And I can't wait to hear from you for the question of the month for September. Just give one piece of advice for a new podcaster. Can't wait to hear your advice. Can't wait to hear your voice. And if you need anything from me at all, howtopodcast.ca. We'll catch you throughout the month of September. Take care, everyone. Be good. Keep podcasting. Keep loving your audience. Take care.